So we're going to begin by forcing our I/O for troubleshooting. Right now it's showing no forces in the processor. I need to see that this button is not working, okay? And maybe they've damaged the button, okay, and it's not doing anything safety related. You should be careful, because if you force stuff, it can become a safety issue. Now, there are different ways we force I/O. If I force this input, anywhere that this is found in the program will activate, because it's a start button. So I'm going to force this. I'm going to right click on it, click force on. They are not enabled yet. It just says force. I'll have to come up here to my forces on my drop down menu, see where it says installed but not active. So I'm going to enable my forces. That's going to override the program, and the logic becomes true without me hitting the button starting the motor. So when I force I/O or inputs, they affect the whole program. Be aware of that. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to remove this I/O force. I can disable it, simply turns it off. They are still in there, but they are not active. I'm going to go ahead and remove them, and they're gone. Now I'm going to force this motor on. So they are installed but not active. I'm going to come over here. It's a two-step process, and I'm going to enable them. And so now I have forced this motor on. Notice that it is not green, and since this is a virtual motor, this HMI doesn't detect that bit on. In a real processor, what I'm doing is I'm forcing the actual data in the card, not the data table, which means I'm actually sending 120 volts out. The reason I do that is for safety, because I don't know what this is programmed to turn on. And so it's typically just for testing that output. So this output could be programmed as an input a dozen different places, but it will not turn the rest of that stuff on. It's only going to turn that power on that card, and that is a safety feature. And so now I know I have power going out that card. I could force this on because they're already active. It reads the bit being on. I could force it off. You can turn stuff off, right? I'm going to force it off, force it on, etc. Now, if I go online with a processor and I see forces are active, see force status, it says it's yellow. It's showing that if I hover over it, I have forces active. We should have an indicator right here on our processor on the front of it. See the little yellow light that says forces? People will leave stuff in your program and the thing's running on a force and they didn't properly fix it, and it's in that way for 6 months, and then you come along trying to troubleshoot it and turn it off and didn't know what it was on or where it was, and the whole thing shuts down and we have to repeat the process. So it is not a good idea to leave a force in a processor for an extended length of time. You're just asking for trouble. But if you go online and you see it, or if you download, sometimes if you download to a processor and it says, warning, forces are active in your processor you're downloading, would you like to enable those in the new download? And you click no, they're all gone. And that may be the only thing keeping that thing running, and it may have been that way for years. So be aware of that. So that's how you force. You are going to force the actual output card, but not the output data table. When you force an input, you're going to force the actual input data table. We're not going to make 120 volts appear on an input. All right, that has to come from a button and a switch. But we're going to force an input data table, and we are going to force an output card, but not the output data table.